After breaking up with Ryan, I always thought we would get back together. I waited for a week, a month, 3 months, until I learned that he had a new girlfriend. That day, I shed all the tears of my life. I begged him without dignity and decency, imploring him to look back at me, until he said to me, "Nina, don't be so worthless." Later, his relationship with the new person ended without a hitch, and he came back to me. Despite all my friends' dissuasion, I got back together with him, having regained what was lost. I thought I would cherish and accommodate him well, but after reconciling, I found that I didn't seem to love him as much as I thought. After getting back together with Ryan, he posted a moment. The picture is of me lowering my head and drinking coffee. The caption is reuniting after a breakup. And then he mentioned me. In just a short while, this moment was flooded with comments from our mutual friends. Some were shocked. Some exclaimed, "Damn." And more were blessings. I looked at that moment. Ryan was sitting opposite me and smiling at me. He was still handsome. Only his handsomeness in his youth was sharp and exposed. Now it has a bit more restrained stability. He watched me scroll through my phone, a smile on his lips, as if waiting for my reaction. I looked for a while, smiled, and then closed my phone and put it on the table. I didn't comment, didn't like, and didn't post a moment following him. I just smiled at Ryan and said, "This coffee is not bad. The same old coffee shop, the same old iced Americano, the same old taste." I was just changing the subject. Ryan probably understood too. His gaze shifted from my phone on the table to my face, his eyes showing some disappointment and dejection. But he paused and didn't show it. He just smiled and asked me, "Do you have time tonight? There's a new Spanish restaurant nearby. The taste is not bad. I'll take you there." I smiled apologetically at him. "Sorry. I have to work overtime at night. It might be very late. I'll just order takeout." He finally fell silent. After a while, he maintained his demeanor and said politely, "Then I'll take you back to the company later." This time I didn't refuse anymore. After returning to the company, in fact, for a long time I just sat in front of the computer in a daze. I lied to Ryan. "There's no need to work overtime. The deadline for this document is next week. I have plenty of time to finish this proposal. I just want to avoid spending time alone with him." I don't know why. After getting back together with Ryan, I didn't feel the joy and satisfaction of having my wish fulfilled. My heart was completely calm. Looking at the moment he posted announcing our reconciliation, I was just indifferent. I sighed, not understanding what was wrong with me. I love Ryan very much. To what extent do I love him? After breaking up with him, I waited for him for 3 years. In fact, it wasn't intentional. There are quite a few people chasing me. But after separating from him, I just can't be interested in others. No desire to get to know them. No desire to communicate. No desire to go out on a date. Sophia once scolded me. "Aren't you going to be a widow for that scumbag? Is he worth it? Is he worth it?" Probably not worth it. To my breakup with Ryan was actually not very decent. After long-distance relationship in college, we sometimes had some small conflicts. We quarreled, made up, quarreled, had a cold war, and made up. Later, for a period of time, his attitude towards me was very cold. The cold tone on the phone, unreturned messages, forgotten good mornings and good nights, the hot and cold attitude. These made it difficult to sleep. But I was very calm. I went to his school to find him with the attitude of solving problems. At that time, it happened to be the school anniversary of his school. He and a junior played a four-handed piano piece. The scene was as beautiful as it could be. I heard someone beside me sigh in amazement. They are so well matched. Are they really a couple? The accumulated grievances and uneasiness erupted at this moment. I had been telling myself to be calm in my heart. But I forgot how the argument between me and Ryan started. I said "B" in a huff lie. Then let's break up. In fact, I didn't really want to break up at that time. I just hoped he could coax me. But at that time, he just stood there expressionlessly and looked at me coldly and said, "Okay. Then let's break up." I turned and left. At that time, Ryan and I were both people with rather proud natures. Because we were both so excellent and had always been praised by people around us, we couldn't learn to bow our heads and accommodate. But in fact, during the time I was with him, because I loved him, I had already restrained my temper very well. I was always the one who bowed my head and accommodated first because I knew he didn't care. At least not as much as I did. There is always a person in a lower position in love. At that time, because I loved him, I put away my pride and self-esteem. But he didn't seem to care much about me. At the moment I turned around, I was actually thinking, "Ryan, just once, can't you bow your head and coax me first?" He didn't. In the period just after we separated, I always maintained an indifferent appearance on the surface. But every time there was a message notification in the upper right corner, my heart would tighten and suffocate. And then a little bit of expectant relief would well up. Could it be Ryan? But every time I opened it, it was only disappointment. On the nth day after we cut off contact, I finally couldn't help but look for him. I asked him when he would come and get the game console he left at my place. It took him a long time to reply to me with one sentence, "Throw it away." I replied with one word, "Okay." Then he never talked to me again. Later, I set him to "Do Not Disturb" for messages. I think he will probably never understand why I did this. But I think he probably doesn't care anyway. I constantly check his updates on various social media platforms every day. But Ryan is originally a low-key person. He rarely posts updates. The frequency is probably twice a year. I stare blankly at his empty moments every day. The day my heart lost balance was when I came out after my Mao Zedong Thought and Introduction to Theory of Socialism course. When going down the stairs, as usual, I clicked on his Douyin homepage. And I found that his number of followings had increased by 1. I opened it and took a look. It was a very cute avatar. An ordinary user. Verified to be from the same university as him. Just an account. It's hard to describe my emotions at that time. It was like a person who can't swim suddenly being thrown into a swimming pool. In an instant, a suffocating feeling overwhelmed me. All the people and things around me disappeared. In the dizzying sensation of the world spinning, only I was left alone. Alone and apprehensive. I was alone. When I stared at that strange account, my hands and feet couldn't help shaking. I exited and clicked in again. I looked at it over and over again. But that account really existed. No matter how many times I looked at it, it didn't disappear out of thin air. It was midsummer. But standing on the stairs, I felt as if I had fallen into an ice cave. But in my heart, I tried to persuade myself with a glimmer of hope. Perhaps it's an acquaintance. A college classmate. It's normal for them to follow each other's Douyin accounts. Probably because I was distracted. When going down the stairs, I missed a step and fell down from the stairs. Perversely, amid the loud screams of the surrounding classmates, a trace of relief welled up in my heart. What I thought at that time was that I finally had a reason to contact you. Ryan. 3. It's hard to imagine that I once secretly felt happy just to be able to send a message to Ryan rightfully. But now when I receive his message, I don't really want to reply. At around 8 o'clock, I received a message from Ryan. He told me that he would buy me a late night snack and probably deliver it around 8:30. I replied politely, "No need. It's too troublesome. You rest early." He said, "I want to see you, Nina." I had to open food delivery apps, order a takeout, and then take a screenshot and tell him that I had already ordered takeout. He replied to me after a while, "Okay then. Eat well." I didn't reply to him. Honestly, Ryan is now considerate and accommodating. He is even better than when we first got together. Now it's me who is absent-minded, confident, and indifferent. It's him who is forbearing, making concessions everywhere, and being nervous and careful. It's as if the more I don't care about him, the more he loves me. I smiled mockingly. For some unknown reason, when the takeout arrived, I sent him a photo. It's like the owner who neglects the puppy, seeing it pitiful, throws to meat bones to it. Ryan's reply was very quick, as if he was waiting with his phone in his hand. He asked, "Call me?" I replied to his message after a while. 3 very cold words, "Tingsi I call me." He replied instantly and asked me, "Which stores? Is it delicious?" I didn't reply. I looked at that sentence and turned off my phone. This is also quite strange. In the past, without him asking, I would definitely be very happy to share with him the Tingsi I Kani from Dai and Dudi. The peanuts inside are very crispy. The kani is very thick. There is plenty of seafood. Crispy, soft and smooth. I like it very much. I'm not a talkative person, but for the person I like, there is an endless desire to share. But now, I have no desire to share with him. I closed my phone and went to do my own things. Probably because I didn't reply to his message. After a while, he sent me a screenshot. It was a comment on his moments. A friend commented, "I knew that you two would end up together after all the twists and turns. In this world, there is no one more compatible than you two." I laughed. Ryan and we are indeed very compatible. He is used to being praised by people around him. He seems easygoing, but in fact he is extremely picky. I once asked Ryan why he wanted to be with me. He looked at me casually and said in a matter-of-fact tone, "Because you are the most outstanding one in the crowd." I laughed. From the moment he was born, his food, clothing, and everything he uses are the best. So when looking for a girlfriend, he also wants to find the most outstanding one in the crowd. Before he was fickle-minded and fell in love with someone else. We were the most compatible couple in everyone's mouth. When we were in high school and not together yet, we were rated as the most compatible people in the school for 2 consecutive years. He is the most handsome person in the whole school, a child of heaven, with good grades and a good family background. Of course, I'm not bad either. I am very beautiful. Not only am I good at studying, but I also often appear on the stage of school evening parties, hosting, playing piano, solo dancing, and I am emotionally calm and stable. Our being together was what everyone expected, and we were also each other's first love. So I never expected that when we were in different places in college, he could change his heart and fall in love with someone else so quickly. For falling down from the stairs was the first month after Ryan and I lost contact. I finally found an excuse to take the initiative to contact Ryan. I sent him a photo of my ankle with a thick plaster cast. From the moment I sent it, I was absent-minded and deliberately restrained myself from looking. Many friends and classmates came to see me. I handled it flawlessly. I deliberately kept myself busy until the continuous stream of classmates and friends left and the infirmary gradually became quiet. I pretended not to care and picked up my phone and opened it. Ryan replied to me with a very short 4 words 3 minutes ago. "Have a good rest." I looked at these 4 words over and over again. First, a trace of joy welled up in my heart. He replied to me. Then there was a long sense of loss. He didn't ask me what happened. He didn't say he would come to see me. Just a polite and distant sentence of, "Have a good rest." As if we were ordinary friends who hadn't contacted each other for a long time. I sighed and didn't reply to him. When I could walk on the ground again, he still didn't send me a message. I went to find him on the 42nd day after we lost contact. That day was his birthday. The night before, Ryan rarely posted a moments. The dark night sky and the bright fireworks. There was no caption. But I looked at it for a long time. I remember that a week before we broke up, I once told Ryan that on his birthday, we would go to watch fireworks together. I don't know what Ryan's moments means. But I looked at it again, and again. A sense of secret joy welled up in my heart. I think this is probably for me to see. After all, he rarely posts some moments once a year. I don't know why when you like someone, you will involuntarily become humble. Lose your mind and be constantly worried about gains and losses. Since I was young, I have always been a very excellent person with clear goals and maturity beyond my years. Things like analyzing a person's updates humbly and constantly and trying to find connections with me. I have only done this for Ryan. My reason tells me that if a man doesn't come to find you, it means he doesn't want to find you. If he doesn't send you messages, it means he doesn't want to send you messages. If he doesn't come to persuade you to stay, it means he is not afraid of losing you. But reason can only help me analyze. It can't control or influence my emotions. If you miss someone, you can only keep missing. If you love someone, you can only keep loving. You won't be completely awake until you hit the south wall and get your head broken and bleeding. So after seeing Ryan's moments post, as if finding a reason for myself, I took Ryan's game console and the gift I prepared for him, put down my dignity, and summoned up my last courage. On his birthday, I went to his school to find him. I waited for more than 4 hours under his teaching building. It was not until evening that I saw him come back. He was not alone. There was also a girl beside him. She was petite and lovely, wearing a skirt and leaning against him. She was also holding a sugar-coated hawthorn in her hand and gesticulating and talking to him about something. She was the junior who played a four-handed piano duet with him at the school celebration party. Ryan was holding her little bear bag in his hand. His eyes were smiling. He was looking at her intently with his head tilted. At the same time, he could still be distracted to watch the road for her. I followed behind them and watched him send that girl to the bottom of her dormitory building. He kept standing at the door and waited until her figure disappeared at the door. Then he looked up. I don't know how long it had passed. The girl appeared on the balcony of the dormitory and waved to Ryan, who was waiting below. Ryan also waved to her and then turned around. As soon as he turned around, he saw me. I held back my tears and stood there and called him, Ryan. The smile on his face gradually disappeared the moment he saw me. His brows were tightly knitted. It was the impatient look I was familiar with. Probably considering that the girl might notice something, he rarely lost his temper. He said patiently, "Not here. Let's talk somewhere else." That day was probably the most embarrassing time in my life. I held onto Ryan's sleeve and wouldn't let go. I cried hysterically. I still don't know why I had so many tears. I cried so hard that I was choking. There were only 3 sentences over and over again. So I didn't wrong you, right? How could you not want me anymore? And one more sentence. Please. Such helpless and bottomless humility. Later, every time I think of it, I am amazed that I could say such words. Ryan let me cry infuriately. His handsome face was cold and heartless, seeming unapproachable. Finally, probably really impatient with my crying, he said, "This is the last time. Nina. We broke up. Don't bother me anymore." Yes. We broke up. I initiated it. In those late nights when I tossed and turned, repeatedly checked his various social media accounts, and wanted to find connections with me and lost sleep because of him. In those late nights when I thought he would at least be a little sad. In those late nights when I was waiting for him to come to find me. It turned out that he was chatting freely with someone new every night. It turned out that the fireworks were not for me. It turned out that after breaking up, he was so happy. It turned out that he didn't stare blankly at the avatar every day like me. Couldn't sleep well. Was distracted. And was struggling whether to send messages actively. It turned out that the cold tone before breaking up, the fading attitude, the unreturned messages, and the forgotten good mornings and good nights were not my paranoia and worry about gains and losses. It turned out that he had planned to break up long ago. It turned out that I was the only one who was sad. Not long after that, he posted on Moments to officially announce. For the day he officially announced was even my birthday. when I was repeatedly checking and waiting for his message. He updated his moments. You are my summer limited edition, and also my long future. If possible, I want you to be in all 4 seasons. The accompanying picture was a photo of a girl holding an ice cream and smiling with curved eyes. He pinned this moment's post. At that moment, I couldn't breathe. The hand holding the phone couldn't help shaking. I just stared at that moment's post in a daze. Like being illiterate. I confirmed these words over and over again, but still couldn't react. Until a friend we had in common sent me a message. No way. Nina. Did you really break up? Oh my God. How could this happen? Is there anyone more compatible than you two in this world? It's such a pity. I thought no matter how much you quarreled, you would definitely make up in the end. I thought so too. I also thought we would make up in the end. At that time, almost before I could react, I had already sent a message. I asked him, "Are you with her?" I held the phone and tossed and turned, waiting and waiting. After a long time, there was still no movement. But 2 minutes ago, he had just replied to a message under that official announcement moments post. Thank you for your blessings. He deliberately didn't reply to my message. Even posting on moments was probably to make me give up and stop pestering. Later, I never bothered him again. I disappeared completely and thoroughly from his world. Until 5 years later when we met again. It was at a project meeting. He was the client. I and my boss prepared the plan and made an appointment with the project leader. Unexpectedly, when we went there, we saw Ian. I don't know if I lost my composure, but I think I should have been very calm. Because after I introduced the plan, the person in charge on the other side smiled and praised me. Miss Nina is really impressive. I smiled. I have heard this sentence countless times since the day I started working. Everyone who sees me for the first time will think that I am a vase that is good looking but not useful. Because of my extremely outstanding appearance. Everyone thinks that beautiful people have no brains. Ryan, who had been listening in silence all this time, finally spoke and said, in high school, she was always in the top 3 in the school and never fell out. This was the first time I gave him a look that day. I didn't ignore the amazement deep in his eyes. Later, he invited me to dinner alone. He sighed to me and said that he had looked for me before. But I disappeared completely, and he couldn't contact me. I didn't ask him when he broke up with his junior. I don't know if all new people can't escape the 3-month novelty period. Nostalgia and longing are all generated from comparison. I only know that Ryan seems to have fallen in love with me again after 5 years. After that, he chased me for a long time. The day he asked me if we could be together again, we were taking a walk by the river. The bright lights were like a galaxy, winding and shining brightly along both sides of the river and extending endlessly. This light was reflected in his eyes, burning, astonishing and sincere. He looked at me and asked, Nina, can we reunite after a breakup? I looked at him silently and intently. Then I smiled. For some unknown reason, as if forgetting all the harm he had done to me, I agreed to be with him again. Sophia asked if I was crazy, compared to the overwhelming blessings from ordinary friends. Only she scolded me harshly. She said, Nina, did a donkey kick your head or is your head filled with water? Have you forgotten how you and Ryan broke up? I was silent. Of course, I hadn't forgotten. After breaking up with Ryan, it took me more than a year to get over it. But that was only on the surface. Only I knew that there was a bottomless swamp in my heart. At the deepest part of the swamp was the harm Ryan had given me. But the more I couldn't forget the harm he had given me, the more I couldn't forget him. The more I told myself to let go and live a good life, the more I couldn't let go. Of course, I'm not confused. I'm as clear as a mirror in my heart, and see all this extremely clearly. But I just can't help missing him, and can't help feeling heartache. Those nights of losing sleep while holding my phone. Those uneasy speculations in his sometimes hot and sometimes cold attitude. 1 second I was completely defeated. And the next second I was happy because of his response. Not to mention those careful attempts to please and persuade him to stay. He abruptly abandoned me when I loved him the most and immediately started a new relationship. My extreme love and hate for him were sealed at the highest point in that instant. Until the moment we met again 5 years later. The love and hate that were sealed back then began to flow again. So when he pursued me again, there was a perverted pleasure in my heart. It was like examining this man who had firmly and resolutely left me behind from another perspective and seeing him become fascinated by me again. Do you love him? I asked myself in my heart. I actually didn't know the answer. But at the moment we got back together, what arose in my heart at that instant was not that a prodigal son had returned and I should cherish him. I just watched infuriately as he was distracted because of me and thought, you also have today. Ryan. You also have today. 5. I told Sophia that I didn't know what was wrong with me. When Ryan posted a photo of me on Moments today, my first reaction was not being touched or happy. I just remembered. After a long time. This moment's post he made for other girls 5 years ago. 5 years. Strangely. I thought I had forgotten. I thought I had already let go and didn't care anymore. I told myself in my heart not to dwell on things from 5 years ago. But I couldn't help but remember every word clearly at that moment. But compared to the faintly suffocating and painful heart every time I thought of it before. At the moment, I thought of it today. I didn't have any emotional turmoil at all. I could even smile at Ryan without changing my expression. Polite. Distant and indifferent. Sophia rolled her eyes at me. Just like the expression she had when I told her that I got back together with Ryan. She told me that there are only 3 possibilities for a broken mirror to be reunited. There was never a break. There was never a mirror. There was never a reunion. Finally, she asked me, Nina, which one do you think you and Ryan are? I don't know. After chatting with Sophia, at around 10 o'clock in the evening, I received a call from Ryan. His tone was calm as he asked me, have you arrived home? I sent you messages but didn't get a reply. I'm very worried. I pretended and said, I was so busy that I forgot. I'm sorry. He smiled and said forgiving lie, it's okay. As long as you're home. After a pause, he said, remember to let me know when you get home safely next time. I will worry. Such a Ryan. Such a humble Ryan. This is probably the first time he has been so accommodating to someone. I think he should have noticed my coldness. He is trying his best to make up for our relationship. To make up for that crack. But now it seems that our roles have been reversed. I don't know why. Suddenly, a strange malicious pleasure welled up in my heart. His pain and probing made me laugh extremely happily. I gently interrupted his words. Let's not talk for now. I'm going to take a bath. In fact, I had already taken a bath. I just wanted to find an excuse to do my own thing. Before going to bed, I saw that he had sent me several messages. Are you done taking a bath? Look at this cat. It's so cute. Below was a video shared on Douyin. Are you asleep? Sleeping? After waiting for a long time. I'm going to sleep too. Good night. I smiled and didn't reply to any of them. It's not intentional revenge. I just don't have the mood. As if everything about him is listless to me. The next morning, I pretended to reply to him with a message. Sorry. I was too tired yesterday and accidentally fell asleep. Good morning. His message came back almost immediately. It's okay. I understand. After a pause, he added another message. Next time, no matter how tired you are, remember to tell me before you rest. I waited for you for a long time yesterday. I smiled. I don't know if Ryan, when waiting for me yesterday, would think of how Nina, who was so humble 5 years ago, waited for him. But it's also good. After 5 years, he finally empathizes with me from 5 years ago. I feel relieved. 6. The first conflict between Ryan and me occurred in the 3rd month after we got back together. Actually, it's not really a conflict. One day, when it was almost time to get off work, He sent me a message saying that his meeting still had 15 minutes. After the meeting, he would come to pick me up. We had made an appointment to have dinner together. I looked at that message and replied politely, "No need. During rush hour. It's very congested. I'll go there by myself." Such thoughtfulness and tact. Linda passed by behind me and happened to see this sentence. She chuckled and said, "Nina, the way you're in a relationship. Those who know that he's your boyfriend. Those who don't know might think you're having a meal with a client." So polite. I smiled and didn't say anything. I don't know if all couples who get back together are like Ryan and me. Not enough intimacy. But more than enough politeness. I waited for more than half an hour in that restaurant. He was late. At the 35th minute. I sent him a message, "I'm leaving first." I received his apology call on my way back. He was always calm and composed. But there was a rare hint of urgency in his explanatory voice. It was nothing more than that 2 points of the project couldn't be decided. So the meeting was delayed. After a pause, he said to me, "Nina, I'm on my way there now." I interrupted his words and said softly and gently, "It's okay. Ryan, I'm already on my way home. We can make an appointment again, when you have time later." He paused and seemed a little down. I don't know why he was down. How understanding and considerate I am. Perhaps he was down because I didn't wait for him like before. Perhaps in his impression. How could I leave? I should sit in that restaurant and wait until his meeting is over and he's done with his work and then smile gently at him and say it's okay. Just like the Nina before. I remember a long time ago. At that time, I had just started a long-distance relationship with Ryan. Once, I asked for leave from the counselor to go find Ryan. In the cold winter months, I waited for him for 2 hours at the school gate. I called his cell phone but no one answered. But I didn't dare to leave because we had made an appointment. I was afraid that he wouldn't be able to find me when he came. I waited and waited. It wasn't until 3 hours later that I finally got through to his phone. He had been playing games all night with his roommates, and forgot our appointment and overslept. I was really aggrieved and down at that time. My hands and feet were so numb from the cold that I had no feeling. But at that time, there were already some problems in our relationship. So I couldn't even say anything angry or blame FUL. Because I knew I didn't have the right to be angry. He wouldn't coax me. I could only look at him aggrieved lie. The heaviest words were just, "Ryan, how could you do this?" What was his reaction back then? Oh, he smiled casually and his tone was cold. "If you can't contact me, just leave on your own. Why wait at the school gate? Are you stupid?" My words got stuck in my throat, and I could only stare at him in a daze. Not knowing what to say. Probably those who are favored all confident. Now that I left as Ryan said before. He apologized to me instead. I saw Ryan when I went downstairs to take out the trash. He was sitting on the steps below my building, wearing a white shirt and with a suit draped over his wrist. He was just sitting there, looking dazed. It seemed that he had been sitting there for a long time. I was a little surprised and called out, "Ryan?" Hearing my voice, he looked up at me, with sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes. Only his brows were slightly furrowed and his expression was lonely, as if he had a lot on his mind. There were flowers and exquisitely wrapped gift boxes beside him. I paused and asked him, "What are you doing sitting here?" He looked at me with focused and serious eyes. After a while, he asked me, "Nina, when we got back together, I forgot to ask you." His expression was hesitant, and he was rarely hesitant. It was strange. He never asked about things he wasn't sure of. With his personality, he always plans carefully and acts only after he is sure. But now he looked at me, looking a bit confused. He asked me, "Nina, do you still love me?" He looked at me deeply. I opened my mouth but couldn't answer his question. Such a simple 3 words. I didn't say them. Before this, I always thought that although I hated him, I still liked him. Otherwise, why couldn't I forget him all these years? But when he asked me this question, I couldn't answer. 7 Ryan, and I fell into a strange situation. That is, to people who knew clearly maintained a superficial harmony, and pretended that everything was fine. But we all knew that in fact, we couldn't go back. I showed fatigue towards everything related to Ryan. But fortunately, the busy work during that time became a good excuse for me. Because of being busy with work, I could push off dates with him, refuse to have meals with him, and reply to his messages very late. So much so that I even forgot his birthday. On his birthday, just as our project was coming to an end, after a group of people had a celebration meal, it was already past midnight. I saw Ryan only when I got home. He was waiting downstairs at my house, looking preoccupied and smoking with his head lowered. I was a little surprised and asked him why he was here. He seemed even more tired than me. From a short distance away, he asked me in a calm tone, "Nina, I sent you messages." I frowned. I was working and I didn't have time to look. He nodded, seemingly indifferent to what I said. After a long pause, he said, "Today is my birthday. I just wanted to have a meal with you." Only at this time did I realize and instinctively apologized. "Sorry. I forgot." Probably because my apology was too perfunctory. His expression didn't soften much. His eyes fixed on my face. "I've been waiting for your message. Even if you just told me that you were busy, you can forget my birthday. You said you didn't have time to look at my messages. But an hour ago, you posted on Moments. You seem very happy at your team's dinner. Who is the man standing by your side and blocking drinks for you?" I knitted my brows. The little bit of guilt I felt for forgetting him gradually receded. I looked at him expressionlessly and asked, "What do you mean?" Ryan sighed. His gaze shifted from my face to the emptiness behind me. The expression on his face was forbearing, and it also seemed like he was reminiscing. He said, "I always felt sorry for you after our breakup. So when I got a second chance, I always wanted to cherish it. But Nina, what about you? Are you still standing in the same place?" I didn't say anything. Finally, he said, "Let's take a break and calm down." I said, "Okay." Ryan disappeared from my world. But his disappearance seemed to have no impact on me. I went to work and got off work as usual. Was busy with projects. Got together with good friends. And even evaluated some internet-famous food stores with Sophia. Honestly, I was very happy. If Ryan hadn't contacted me, I might have forgotten his existence. I don't know how many days it had been after we lost contact. I received a message from Ryan. He asked me for the password of an app that we registered together. I sent it to him frankly. Then he asked me, "How are you going to spend your birthday?" Ryan and I have birthdays that are just a little over 2 months apart. When he asked me this, I could only say politely and distantly, "Sophia invited some friends to celebrate for me at her home." He was silent. I didn't know what he meant. On the day of my birthday, it was quite lively. Until at some point, Sophia suddenly stood by the window and let out a sound of surprise. Then her expression had a strange and mysterious excitement. Suppressing her voice, she waved at me and motioned for me to come over. I walked over. She pointed at a tall figure downstairs and asked me in a low voice, "Damn. Is that Ryan?" I looked intently for a while and then was stunned. It really was him. I didn't know when he came or how long he had been waiting. He didn't send me a message. He seemed bored and kept walking around the car. Then, probably tired from walking, he stood by the car, lowered his head and leaned against the door. Not knowing what he was thinking, after a while, he looked up and glanced at the lights of thousands of households upstairs. I instinctively dodged back. Actually, this was unnecessary. He didn't know which floor Sophia's home was on. So naturally he couldn't see me. But I didn't know why. At that moment, I just didn't want him to see me. Sophia's voice was very excited, with a sense of satisfaction as if my great revenge had been achieved. I really didn't expect that Ryan would have such a day. It's really a turn of fortune. She pulled me to the sofa and sat down, laughing happily. Come on, Nina. You can stay at my place tonight. Let Ryan wait. It's best if he waits all night and gets bitten to death by mosquitoes. For some reason, I suddenly thought of the scene when I waited for him a long time ago. Because I was afraid that he wouldn't be able to find me. So I didn't dare to leave. Now it's probably the same. Ryan might be afraid that if he sits in the car and doesn't notice me leaving. So he has been standing outside waiting and staring at the iron gate of the building in the community. I suddenly felt a twinge of sadness. The sadness wasn't for Ryan. Instead, I finally understood why I got back together with Ryan. I understood why I couldn't let go of him and forget him in these 5 years. It's because 5 years ago, I really suffered a lot of grievances. What I can't let go of has never been Ryan. What I can't let go of are those times of being subjected to cold violence. The anxiety of holding my phone and waiting for a goodnight message that never comes late at night. Those seamless transitions and the hurt of being betrayed. Sophia once said that there are only 3 possibilities for a broken mirror to be reunited. There is no break at all. There is no mirror at all. And there is no reunion at all. Now I know which one Ryan and I are. It turns out that from the beginning to the end, we have never been reunited. Our reunion after 5 years is only because of my unwillingness. I stood up. Sophia looked at me in surprise and grabbed my wrist. Astonished. You can't be serious. Nina. After just a while. You feel sorry for him? You deserve to be let down for being so love-struck. I smiled and said, Sophia, I just figured it out. Now I give Ryan the cold shoulder. Ignore him. And act indifferently. Except for not having a seamless transition. What's the difference between what I do to him and what he did to me back then? What's the difference between me and him back then? Ryan was very surprised when he saw me. He was even somewhat rarely flustered and stammered as he explained to me. I didn't want to disturb you. I just didn't want to miss today. So I was waiting down there. Did you finish so soon? Ryan. I called his name and stood in front of him, smiling at him. Since we got back together, I probably haven't smiled at him so gently. He was stunned for a moment, and a very faint smile slowly appeared at the corner of his mouth. Until I said my next sentence. I said, let's break up. The smile that hadn't fully formed at the corner of his mouth froze there. But I smiled with relief and freedom. Sorry. You know, I am a serious and stubborn person. 5 years ago, you suddenly pulled away. Our story didn't have a proper ending. But today, I suddenly feel that it's enough. It's enough. Do our best to make each other happy when in love. When not in love, frankly tell the other person and bless each other. I don't want to be like Ryan back then. Because I suddenly understand that the greatest harm to someone is not telling them that I don't love you anymore. It's not clearly telling the other person your feelings and making her constantly guess whether you still love her in those countless late nights. When I stood upstairs and saw Ryan like this, I understood. I can't let myself become like Ryan was back then. So I said to Ryan, let's break up. The final chapter of our story should have ended 5 years ago. He paused for a long time. I saw his hand hanging by his side clench and then loosen. Loosen and then clench again. He didn't ask me why. Just like I did back then. Finally, he smiled. Probably because the street lamp was too bright. I saw the thin hint of tears in his eyes. He didn't say wish me happiness. After a long time, he said, I'm sorry. A senseless sentence. Both he and I understood. This is the sentence you owed me 5 years ago. I smiled and said, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I can delete you and the harm you did to me from my memory. It doesn't matter. Finally, I can let go and love someone else. Before finally turning around and going upstairs, I said, goodbye. He smiled, looking handsome and elegant, polite, distant and courteous. Just like when we first met. After a long time, he nodded and said goodbye to me. said goodbye to me, said goodbye to me, said goodbye to me, said